Hello there, this is John. In this video, you're going to see me, along with Chris Maddock and Liam Dunnicky, some good friends and colleagues, set up online real-time music for 3 people. So looking at ways of going beyond the one-to-one duo setup that we have looked at so far. This is a trio, but you're welcome to try with more people than that, 4, 5, 6 or more. Thing that you may run into as the barrier is that the person who is acting as the server, which in this case is me, needs to have enough internet bandwidth to receive and then send out signals to everybody who's connecting. Okay, so go back earlier in the video if that is completely meaningless to you, because it shouldn't be. But basically, it means that while everybody else just needs to have decent internet, the person who is acting as the server needs to have very good internet to the extent that they're dealing with, 4, 5 or more connected people. So I'm lucky to use hyperoptic internet, which has very good bandwidth, and so I'm acting as the server for 3 people. In the video that comes after this one, which is the last one in this series, that's with Doug Hunt, he will introduce ways of going into really high numbers, the teens of people. And those ways will also be things that you can look at yourself if you're not fortunate enough to have internet bandwidth that allows you to run a server of your own for 5 people. Okay, all these things will become a bit clearer as you watch the video. But basically, I just want to say that what I'm doing here extends very easily beyond 3 as well, but with that caveat that it relies on the internet bandwidth of the person who is being the server. If you encounter difficulties, then watch this video and then watch the one afterward to look at ways that you can get around that limitation. Enjoy the video. The way we're going to do this is using a diagram that looks like this. So if you go back to the earlier videos, you'll see what this means. But the idea is that I am the hub server. Okay, so we have Chris Maddock on saxophone there. Just give us a wave, Chris, or something. That's good. Liam Dunnicky, who you would have met earlier in the series, on piano, both based in London. And they're both connecting to me, but they're not connected directly to each other. That's going to be the idea. You'll remember that the other option was a triangle diagram where each one of us connects to other person, which for 3 people might be a slightly better way to do it, but a bit more complicated. For 4 people, it becomes so complicated that it will drive you mad unless you enjoy the difficulty of setting it up. So this is what we're going to be doing, and I thought we'd show you this in a couple of different ways. Firstly, with Jamulus, just to illustrate the idea. And so I'm going to run a Jamulus server on my computer. When you install Jamulus, notice that 2 applications are installed. One of them is Jamulus, and one of them is Jamulus server. Looks like this. So I've opened that application already. I'll show you what it looks like. There's not much to see here. Okay, there's some IP addresses there. I guess I might blur them out in the video edit. But this is Chris and Liam. Okay, so just to show you as well, something in the router settings here. So if you remember, when we did one-to-one with a server on one of the computers involved, we had to set up port forwarding. So go back to the earlier videos if that doesn't mean anything to you. The same thing applies here, because I'm trying to run a server on my own computer. So I'm going into my router settings here and finding the port forwarding section. Again, this has all been explained before. This is the port forwarding rule that I used for Jacktrip when it was just me and Sam, or me and Liam in previous videos. As you see here, that's the IP address of my computer on the local network. And here are the ports. So for Jacktrip, they start at 4464, and I've just opened a few more after that to give a bit of room for more complex setups. The protocol was UDP. So now for Jamulus, if I'm going to be a server on Jamulus, at least we have to do a similar thing, but now the ports are 22124 for starting port, and I've just opened a couple more there just in case I need them. So that's what I've set up. I have started a Jamulus server like this. I'll just minimize that now. And what each of us has done in Jamulus itself, so I've got both of them open, the other guys only have Jamulus open. We've all gone into our settings, we've chosen the appropriate device, so an audio interface for Chris, and just the built-in input and output for Liam. We've chosen a buffer size, chosen 64, all of us. We've left everything else as default. The jitter buffers here are set to automatic. So this is analogous roughly to the Q option that we've introduced in Jacktrip already, but now the buffers are, in theory, being adjusted dynamically to minimize glitches and hopefully minimize latency as well. So they're trying to do that trade-off automatically. And hello, John here in the editing suite. I just want to show you in detail how we actually connect to the Jamulus server that I set up, because I realized we didn't do that in the main video. So I had set up the Jamulus server on my computer, just open the Jamulus server app. That's all there is to it. And then the other two guys, they clicked connect like this. And then instead of clicking anything in here, they went to this address here and they typed the IP address of me, which I had found, as we described earlier, in the video series. So it would be something like this. It's not that, again, that's just made up, but that's something like what it would be. And each of them would just press that and then press connect. That's how they connected to me. For me, I'm actually connecting to a server on my own computer, and that's a bit of a special case. In that case, you type the address 127.0.0.1. That will be the same for any computer, okay? So that's, I won't go into the detail, but it's just the way that the computer refers to itself. So that is what I typed in order to connect to the server that was running on the same computer that I was actually working on. The second thing to say at this point, and this will be discussed a bit more in the next video with Doug Hunt, is that, of course, there is a list of public servers here, okay? So if you want to, and I don't recommend you do this as the only thing that you do, right? But you can connect to a public server, nothing wrong with that. So I would highlight it there and press connect. A volume slider comes up for me. I'm the only one on the server right now, but then I could have Liam and Chris connect to the same server, and we would have to mute everybody else on the server in order to have a sort of private experience. Even then, it's not private, of course. If I read out my PIN number for my credit card on this server, somebody else could hear it. But just for the sake of completeness, that is how you would use public server on Jamulus. Back to the video. And in contrast to Jacktrip, there are a few statistics here as well. So audio stream rate, this relates to the fact that Jamulus sound is compressed. So if you remember, MP3s or whatever, MP3 is a compressed audio format, and something roughly similar to that is happening here. So unlike Jacktrip, it's not sending the raw uncompressed audio. It's compressing it and then sending it. That reduces the data load on my internet, because I've got these two signals coming in and out, but the amount of data is less. But it does add a bit of latency. And we have some statistics on the overall delay here, which is hovering around some pretty scary looking numbers. That might come down a bit when we turn off our Zoom video cameras. But it's as you can see, it's depending dynamically sort of on how these buffers here are being changed. So each of us, if we wanted to, we could uncheck the auto thing here, and then we could vary these buffer heights, more glitches, but less latency as the buffer sliders come down. That would be how it works. And that would be just like tweaking in the Jacktrip. But we'll leave it there for now. I have a sort of rudimentary recording setup going on. It is possible to record directly in Jamulus. So I, as the server, can actually set up a recording in there if I want to, but I'll just do it this way for now. So, okay, Liam and Chris, are you both there? How are you doing? Okay, brilliant. Was that on Zoom that you just spoke to me? Or
that was on Jamulus, but now.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just hovering over Liam and Chris here. What they're going to do is leave themselves on Zoom just so they don't disappear, but we're all going to mute ourselves on the Zoom call. Okay, I'm about to do that. Liam and Chris muted already, and they both turn their video off just to reduce the strain on my internet, I suppose. Okay. So I'm going to mute in a few seconds, and from that point on, for the next minute or two, everything you'll hear will be on the Jamulus recording. So we just had a little play on Jamulus, not too bad. The automatic buffer adjustment seemed to work reasonably well. The latency was sort of flying around a little bit, but it wasn't ever too bad. How did that feel for you guys?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah. So sorry. So I have good internet on my end, and at least when we turn the video cameras off, that reduces the workload on the computers, and it reduces the workload on the internet bandwidth itself as well. And that seemed to give us a pretty good experience. So that was me acting as a hub server with Jamulus. Okay, now you guys, if you can just mute yourselves on Zoom, I'm just going to tell the folks at home about some Jacktrip setup stuff. So now we will get into doing a Jacktrip hub server. Okay, now at this point, I'm just going to go back into the router settings. This information we'll put in the written notes as well. But again, we're going back to that port forwarding section because I, as a server, have to do that. For Jacktrip and Jamulus, we've seen the port forwarding rules already. But for the Jacktrip as a hub server, I need to do this. So I've set UDP ports starting at 61,000, and again, just opening a few of them, depending if I need more. So I have that. And then I also have a TCP open port at 4464. And again, just with a few extras. I don't think that's strictly necessary, but I turn these rules off anyway when I'm not using them. So these two in combination are what I need to run my Jacktrip hub server. Okay, so I'm going to show you how that starts to look now. Okay, I think I'll set the buffer size in Jacktrip to 32. So Chris and Liam, if you're hearing me, just open QJack CTL and do this in the setup window. So choose 44,100 for the sample rate and 32 for the buffer size. I'm starting my Jack server here. And now I'm going to open a terminal. So command space, terminal, and then press enter. Okay, here we go. So the Jacktrip command that I used before, you remember, was something like this: Jacktrip -s spaces in between, that's shown here. And then -n1, I might have used a -z at one point to change the way that glitches are handled. And we've used Q8 or any number higher than 4 also in the past to slightly reduce glitches and to slightly increase latency. So that's the kind of command that I would run as a server normally. In order to be a hub server, I just need to change the S to a capital S. That's all there is to it. Okay, so I've got my -z there for the to change the way that glitches are treated. My capital S to be a hub server, one channel, and then I'm going to set Q to 10, I think. So I'm going to press enter just there, and you can see now that the stuff which it presents to me in the terminal when I run that command is very slightly different to what it was when I set up my server previously. So as I was just saying, I have set up a Jacktrip hub server. In this window here, I'm typing, but I'm not entering on my computer. I'm just showing the other guys and the audience what they would run. So this command, again, is an exact copy of what I have in Jacktrip S there, but it's with a C for client. and the C is followed by my IP address, which I'm not showing here, but you remove the square brackets as well, and you just type 87.23.156.12. That's a made-up address, but the other guys have my IP address. So this is exactly the same, but again, the C is capital. Hello there, John here. I'm just jumping in the editing suite to show you a bit of extra information about this stage. So the first thing to say is that when I run the server command to make a hub server, that's the capital S, as you saw in the main video, I can add an option -P2, and the P is lowercase there. What this will do is automatically wire up Chris and Liam in my graph window so that they can hear each other. And that would have saved me a bit of manual work that I'm about to do in the main video. So that's one thing to mention. I'll put some more about that in the written material that goes with the video. The other thing to say is that when Chris and Liam connect to me as the hub server, so they would be running something like this, something like that. They don't use the -P or the -P command. That only applies for the server, but they can add -K and then their name like this. So that's an option which is supposed to make their name rather than their IP address appear in my graph window. It just makes it a bit easier to organize things. However, in some of my testing, that doesn't seem to work. So what I instead recommend is that when you go into the graph window, here you find somebody with an IP address like that. If people join sort of one by one, for example, then what you can do is just double click on this IP address here and give it a name, like Liam, for example. So that's one way of just organizing things a bit better. It may be that the -K option works fine for you, but for me, it's a bit unreliable. Back to the video. So the guys have just run that command, and then I have seen this nice bit of confirmation on my end. Okay, so I'm getting some connections there, but in the QJAC CTL window, things look a bit different to how they did before. Okay, now in my bit, in my graph, okay, just don't worry about the outside here, but I have these two guys in the middle. This is Liam and Chris, respectively. I think Liam on the bottom, yeah, that's right. And they've both appeared in my graph window because they're both connected to me, but they're not appearing in each other's graph window, okay? So that means that I have to handle the job connecting them to each other. I'm going to do that by connecting the receive from Liam here to the send of Chris, and the receive from Chris to the send of Liam, like that. And now that means that over Jack Trip, all three of us can hear each other, but just as it was with Jamulus a moment ago, it's because of this kind of setup. Okay, so there's no direct connection from Liam to Chris. They're just both going to my computer, and then I, with this graph window here, I'm just making sure the connections exist for them to hear each other. Okay, so let me just make one more connection here. It's fine. So on the outside, don't worry about that too much. I'll put some detail about this in the written notes perhaps, but all I'm doing is just allowing myself to record all three of us in Logic when we start playing. So I'm in Logic there, but I won't show you. I won't show you that because it's not in the scope of this particular setup. So here we go. I am about to mute myself on Zoom again. And stop my video just to de-stress the internet connections a bit. And then we'll have a quick... I'm going to record it with the glitches in place. So you'll hear exactly what we are hearing. We're working at quite a glitchy setting because we want to minimize the latency. And then later on, we might include a recording where we've each recorded ourselves on our own computers at the same time. Again, I've covered that earlier in the video, but that will allow us to send those non-glitchy stems to one another and create a glitch-free recording, even though, as you'll hear shortly, the connection we're on right now is quite glitchy. Hello there. So I'm just in the editing suite, jumping in for a few seconds to tell you that the next track you hear is going to be one where Chris and Liam, they both recorded themselves at home on their own computers at the same time. So they were streaming their audio to me over Jacktrip, and I was recording it. But then afterwards, they were able to send me the glitch-free audio tracks that I had recorded at home. You might remember this from the glitch-free recording workflow that I gave instructions on already. So I won't go over it all again, really, but just to say that I have Liam's glitchy track here, Chris's glitchy track here, and then all I've done is dragged in the stems without glitches that they sent me. I've aligned them perfectly with these ones, and then I've muted the other tracks. So you're about to hear how that sounds. So we've just done a bit of playing with both Jamulus and Jacktrip with Chris Maddock on sax and Liam Dunnicky on piano. So that's great. I'm going to have inserted that already in the video for you to hear. But I just want to show you one final thing that I mentioned in passing earlier on with Liam here, and that is that when I'm a hub server, there's an extra option that I can use. So you will have seen just now how when I was the hub server that both Liam and Chris showed up in my graph window in QJackCTL, and I was able to connect them to each other so they can hear one another. And obviously I connected them to me as well, and so on. So my graph window started to look a little bit interesting, but that was no problem. And I should probably put in the written notes, or it's in the Jacktrip documentation. There are some more options you can put on the command line for Jacktrip that will automatically wire up the connections between the parties on the hub server in a way that you choose. So that's always open to you as well. But the option I want to show is the broadcast option here. This is something that I, as the server, add to my command, but it doesn't change the command that Liam runs. So Liam, you just have the previous command ready to go. But I'm going to type here double dash, okay, broadcast, and then maybe I'll put, I don't know, 200. So broadcast, it doesn't mean do a live stream or anything, although it is relevant for live streaming. What it means is that any client that connects to me, in this case Liam, is going to send me a stream which is fast and glitchy and has a queue parameter set as 10 here in this case. But as well as that, they're going to send me another stream which is not real time, so it has a queue parameter of 200 instead. That's what this 200 means. So that's going to make it much more latent. It's going to have a delay on it, but we're not going to use that to play together. So I'm not going to listen to that as I play. But because it has such a big queue size on that signal, it's going to be less glitchy. So this is what Dan Tepfer uses in New York when he does his live streams. He uses the real-time glitchy signal to listen to his colleague who's playing. But on the live stream, the thing that he's actually sending is this so-called broadcasted signal. So all he has to do then is to delay his own audio, and you can do this in OBS, which is a streaming software that many people use. He just has to delay his audio to match the broadcaster signal there. So I'm going to press enter to start my server with this broadcast option enabled. And then Liam, if you can just connect. Okay, so he's connected to me. That's great. Okay, so now you can see what's happened in the graph window, and this is all I wanted to show really. It's just the fact that as well as the receive here, which is a bit glitchy as I can currently hear, I also have this broadcast signal. Okay, and I can therefore, in any of the ways that we've discussed in the recording workflow video, I can pipe the broadcasted one to separate track and record that, for example, if I don't want to bother with the hassle of sending stems back and forth. And more importantly for live streaming, which we'll cover either in the written notes or in some future videos perhaps, the broadcasted signal is a helpful, less glitchy signal to serve to your live stream listeners. So I'm just going to wrap up this video briefly because that was quite a long one. We've talked about a couple of different ways of going beyond duo into a trio with Jamulus and Jacktrip. In both cases, we used a hub server type setup because we didn't want to get into the complexity of this triangle web of connections with 3 people that I've spoken about already. So we showed you how that works in Jamulus, talked about the advantages of that and the disadvantages as well, and then we showed the setup for Jacktrip as well. And in the second case with Jacktrip, I illustrated how you can really make a pristine, glitch-free real-time recording by having the other people record at home as well as playing with you on Jacktrip, so at the same time. And then you just incorporate those stems and mute the original glitchy ones once you've got them lined up correctly, time-wise. So that was good stuff. And then we briefly at the end mentioned this Jacktrip broadcast option, which sends a less glitchy but higher latency signal alongside the original one to help with live streaming and so on. So just to prepare for the interview with Doug Hunt, which is coming up in the next video, I'd like to mention that in both of these cases, with Jamulus and with Jacktrip, I was setting up the server on my computer. So I showed you the port forwarding information for that, and I showed you myself running the server on my computer. However, if you want to go to even more people and you want to improve performance, something that we'll talk about in the next video is that each of these things could have been installed on a private server that I could rent. So I might actually do this, to be honest. I could pay less than £10 a month for a private server, which would be in a good place geographically. So in my case, it would be in London, but it might be in the north of England for you and your colleagues. And then I can actually install the Jamulus server without too much difficulty on that server that I've rented. So it's I've kind of purchased or rented an external computer to do that. The benefits of that will be that it will take some stress off my own computer and my own internet connection, which is good, but a commercial internet connection might be even better. And also the fact that a commercial server that I rent is likely to be on what you can call the backbone or the highway of the internet. So it's closer to one of the kind of main roads of the internet, metaphorically speaking. And that will mean that the latency might be even better. At the moment, although my internet is great, the audio from Liam and Chris is still having to come all the way to what is, relatively speaking, a back road of the internet. So that process of renting an external private server and then installing Jamulus can be done quite easily with Jamulus, just with a bit of technical know-how. It can also be done with Jacktrip as well. That's perfectly possible. And that's something that we'll talk about a bit in the next video. So I just wanted to mention that now. Great. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time.